Solid Signal podcast for the week of September 19th, 2016. And the subject this week, not a big surprise, it's the Emmys. Now, to you, the Emmys might be old news if you're listening to this on Thursday or Friday, but as I do this podcast, it's actually Monday, and the Emmys for me are fewer than 24 hours away. And I watched the broadcast, at least didn't fast forward through most of it. I fast forwarded through a little bit, I admit. But, come on. And I thought I would comment on what I saw and what it says about the state of television in general. First things first, you may be saying, how does this guy have any standing to comment on the Emmys? And you know what? You're right. I will say that I know a person who has an Emmy, and if that person is listening right now, congratulations. You didn't win it this year, but I remember when you did. But otherwise, you're right. You know what? In this regard, I'm just an average guy who has no more standing to comment on the Emmys than any of you. I just happen to be doing a podcast, and that means that I get a chance to say what I think, and I would welcome all of your comments, either from the YouTube version of this podcast or posted at blog.solidsignal.com, anywhere you like. So, having given the usual disclaimer, let's get on to the podcast proper, shall we? When I watched the Emmys last night, first of all, I thought it was a great show, very entertaining, and managed to come in on time, which is pretty amazing considering that it's actually produced by the same people from the technical side who do the Oscars, which never comes in on time. You have to wonder about that. I thought the jokes were, for the most part, funny. I thought that the speeches were, for the most part, touching. And there were a few cases where I didn't agree with the winner, but that doesn't mean that the people who did win shouldn't be congratulated. What we see is that there is now so much video entertainment out there, so much that qualifies for an Emmy, whether it's streaming or broadcast or cable or satellite. There is more content now than there ever was before. And even Jimmy Kimmel pointed out that there just isn't enough time to consume all this content out there. And one or two of the shows that were mentioned, I'd never even heard of. And hey, I make my living talking about this stuff and writing about this stuff, and I'd never heard of them, so I'm going to go back and check out one or two. And we should ask, just because there is a lot of content, does it mean that it's actually better content? In some cases, yes. I think we're looking at quality entertainment that is better than most movies were 30 years ago, that is more compelling, that is better written, that is better produced. And I gotta say, it really says a lot about television and how far television has come as a medium, and what we mean by television, of course, now being just all video entertainment, whether you stream it or broadcast it or whatever. Still, still I find myself continually concerned about the overly dark and overly troubled characters that we see on television. Of course, there are some that are not, and I think if you look for the shows that you want to find, you're going to find shows that have really upbeat people, if that's what you want to find, and really dark and troubled people, if that's what you want to find. But I said this, I think, in a previous podcast or maybe an article. It's got to be easier to write these complex, dark, troubled characters than it would be to write a complex, upbeat character. When you look at the character of Kimmy Schmidt, for example, which, the actress did not win an award, but I think the show picked up one here and there. This is a character that's got to be a lot harder to write for than you think, because she's very complex. She's very layered, and yet she's very optimistic. And that's something that you don't see that much on television. I think that if you're writing a story about somebody who is involved in all sorts of really dark things, well, there's something by nature entertaining about that. And so I'd say, once again, and I know I've said this before, I challenge television to write characters who are layered and complex and interesting and challenging and upbeat at the same time. There's just so much to watch, and I know that I'm never going to get to all of it, and I, just like all of you, try to choose carefully. And more, I wish that I had more choices for upbeat programming. Anyway, congratulations to the winners, and I'll see you all next time.